Good morning and welcome back to Storytime with Joe. Today is the anniversary of the eruption of Mount St. Helens, May 18th, 1980. I was in college then. So I had to find a story that was about a mountain. And I found one in the Children's Bible in 365 stories. It's about Moses and the Ten Commandments and Mount Sinai. So that's the story I want to read today. It starts off God's mountain. The people of Israel set up camp at the foot of Mount Sinai, where God had first called Moses to be their leader. Moses climbed the mountain to be alone and quiet, so that God could speak to him. "Tell the Israelites," God said, "that I have looked after them just like a mother bird looking after her chicks. I will go on caring for them, but they, for their part, must obey me. I'm going to speak to you, Moses, in front of them all to show them that you really are my chosen leader. They will see only a cloud, but they will hear my voice." Moses hurried down to the camp to let everyone know about God's message. The Israelites had certainly learned that God was taking care of them, but now they had to realize that God is holy too. Holy means separate or apart. God is not a human being with faults and failings. He is utterly good, with nothing bad in him. His people too must love and obey him by doing what is right. Moses told the people to get ready for God to speak to them. They must wash themselves in everything they wore. That would remind them how pure and clean they needed to be in the presence of God. Moses marked out a boundary line all around the bottom of the mountain. No one, not even an animal, must cross that line and come too close to God's mountain. On the third day, a deep rumble of thunder brought them all to the doors of their tents. Moses led them to the foot of the mountain. The top was wrapped in a cloud, but as they watched, the cloud changed to fiery smoke, and the thunder crashed more loudly. Then the air was shattered by the sound from a long blast of a trumpet. The people trembled and shook with fear. Moses spoke to God, and a roll of thunder came in reply. "Don't make us stay here," the frightened people begged. "God is too great for us to listen to. You speak to him instead and tell us what God is saying." So Moses and Aaron set off alone up the mountain to hear what God had to say. The Ten Commandments. Loving God. When God talked to Moses on Mount Sinai, he gave them many laws for the people to keep. Because God is our maker, he knows best what will make us happy. If the Israelites obeyed his laws, they would live happily together. Some of the laws that God gave Moses were especially important for people living at that time. But many of them are important for all people, including us. The best known of these are the Ten Commandments. The first five tell us the right way to treat God. God says, "Do not worship other gods." That is the first commandment. In those days, people had many gods and goddesses, as they did in Egypt. Today, people may give all their love and loyalty to money or success. God taught that he alone is God and maker of all. He alone is fit to be worshipped. God says, "Do not make idols to worship." That's the second commandment. The Israelites might well have thought it a good idea to make an image to represent God, of something beautiful, maybe something life-giving, like the sun, or something strong like a bull. But God knew that when people make an image, they soon begin to worship the image itself. They forget that God is much greater than anything they can make or imagine. God says, "Do not take God's name in vain." That's the third commandment. God's name stands for God himself. No one must use it in a swear word or promise in God's name to do something and then go back on their word. They must show reverence for God by treating his name with respect. God says, keep the Sabbath day holy. That's the fourth commandment. Holy means separate or apart. Remember that from earlier? The seventh day, the Sabbath, must be set aside especially for God. It was intended to be a day for learning about him and worshiping him. It was also to be a happy holiday when even the animals had a rest from work. God says, respect your parents. That's the fifth commandment. God made families and put parents in charge of their children. Duty to God includes showing care and respect for parents. Jesus summed up all these commandments in a single commandment to love God with all your heart. We love God when we obey him. The 10 Commandments on loving others. The first 5 of the 10 Commandments are about loving and obeying God. The last 5 are about loving others. To love others means to treat them as we would like them to treat us and do nothing that would harm them. God says, do not murder. That is the 6th commandment. It is wrong to kill out of anger, spite, or cruelty, or in order to get money. God says, do not commit adultery. That means that husbands and wives are to be loyal to one another. God says, do not steal. That is the 8th commandment. No one has the right to take anything that belongs to someone else. God says, do not tell lies about others. That is the 9th commandment. No one must tell lies about someone when he is on trial in a court of law. It is also wrong to tell lies about people behind their backs. God says, do not covet. That is the 10th commandment. To covet means to want something that belongs to someone else so badly that you're really jealous of them. An Israelite might look at someone's house or donkey or wife and think how much nicer they were than his own. God said that he was not to be jealous or try to take them for himself. When God had finished speaking, he told Moses that he would give him 2 stone tablets with his laws engraved on them. Then the people would know that these were God's own laws. That's the story of the 10 Commandments. And about a mountain, very different than Mount St. Helens, but a good story to remember as we remember that eruption in 1980. I hope you enjoyed the story, and I'll see you again next week with Joe's Storytime. Take care.